Awesome. All right, let me just spotlight myself here. All right, hi guys. My name is Kelly Frankenberg, and I'm your host for this session's Cabin Fever Reliever. We are a group called Art to Change the World. We are a collective artist group in Minneapolis. And in the winter, it snows sometimes. It gets really cold and no one wants to go anywhere, or it's too much snow and we can't get places for events. So we decided 3 years ago to host events online. And lucky for you guys, I happened to have met David Becker at a convention and he teaches online. So I thought this would be great to have him, plein air artist, here for you guys tonight. So I will let him introduce himself, talk more about it, and then I'm for those of you who were emailed the link, I'm going to email you a survey after. If you could fill that out, just 3 questions, that'd be great. Helps us get grants. And yeah, any changes for next year. So there's other classes you can all sign up for too. It's on the link in your email. And thanks for coming tonight. All right, I'm going to spotlight David for you and we'll get going.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Kelly. It's I do this a lot when I'm doing these. Ever since COVID, I've learned how to do these videos and stuff, and it's been actually really nice because you can get all over the world, and I can do it right from my home. And so that's an amazing thing. Though this last year I did travel a lot and do a lot of plein air painting, but I also do studio painting, and so we're going to be doing this picture right here. Let me just show you. This is a value pattern I usually do when I do my classes on Thursday night here on YouTube, not on Zoom. I do them on YouTube, but I always change all the pictures I'm doing to black and white. I change it to black and white. And like I said, if you have any questions, please just unmute yourself and ask the question while I'm speaking because I can't look at everybody and I can't see raised hands. So just go ahead and ask a lot of times. And so what I do is I take the image that's colored and I make it black and white. I make it into a notan. I call it a notan because it's a black and white. This one I left a little bit of gray to show you the grayscale, but I usually try to make it so that the grays are have to be put into either the black part of the scene or the light part of the scene. So you look at your value pattern because as a watercolorist, you have to know this before you get started. You have to know what is going to be light and what's going to be dark and what's going to be middle tone. It doesn't have to be when you make it a note 10, it doesn't have to be with the grayscale because we want to like look at the big pattern of light and dark or black and white. And so it's like almost like the yin yang thing. It's the design of the whole thing. And so this, as you can see, is the design of the darks being right here on the left and on the right and down the middle will be my lights. And I'm going to keep that in mind and not worry about the color so much. I'm going to get more worried about the values. And so the colors one over here, what I did is, and this, and why I have two of them here, is I upped the color a little bit on Photoshop just to see what it would look like if I really emphasize the color and bring it up and bring it really bright colored. I didn't like it as much as the other one, but I like to do that just to see where you, and also a lot of times you can change colors and things. But with this picture, it's basically this one right here. And so that one is the one you're going to see right here on my tabletop. And so what we're going to do is we are going to do it in watercolor. And in my YouTube channel lately, what I've been doing is one color, two color, three color, but I'm doing it in full color. And my palette is right here in my colors. Let me see if this is what I usually show for my supplies. I use a lot of Holbein. I use Holbein paints, and these are the colors of my palette. So later on, if you go stop the video, you can always go back and check out what I'm using. I'm using Stonehenge paper, and I have go back to the tabletop, and you're gonna hear we have a train outside. So right now the train whistles you're hearing. And so it makes it sound like I'm painting outside, right? And so what we're going to do is the lights to dark. I have a thing called the Becker Art three step. And how I do all my watercolors is the same way. I do step one is all the lights and all the color scheme. I'm going to figure that out right from the beginning. I have to put in all my lights. And so what I'm going to do is right away wet my paper and I'm going to get my light areas. And sometimes step one and step two is all my large mediums and all my large darks. So since there's not many lights in this picture, this can almost have step one and step two together. Like I'll do my lights, but right away go right into step two where I get my large, mediums, and darks because this from the background to the foreground here will be from light to dark. And so that's my step two. The step three is then just doing the detail, darks and lights. So those are the three steps of every painting I do. Now I do a lot of wet into wet to get soft edges, and I do hard edges on dry paint. You do wet on dry when you want a hard edge, and wet into wet when you want a soft edge. It's that simple. So let me just get going here. Since we only have 1 hour, usually that's the rate of my things on Thursday night when I do my paint-alongs on Thursday night. It's all 1 hour. Sometimes we go over a little bit by, the 2 or 3 minutes, but usually it's 1 hour. So this is 300-pound paper, and so I don't mount it to anything. If you're doing 140 and you tape it down, it's going to get wrinkly. And so I really don't like my students taping down their paper. And I also do standard size papers so that when I get done, I can just mount it on a board and then varnish it, wax it, and then put it into a frame like an oil painter does, instead of putting glass on everything. And because glass and a mat and all that costs lot more money, and you can just put it right into a plein air frame and you're done, like just like the oil painters do, and just like the acrylic painters do. They just put it right into a frame without glass, without a mat. And so that's what I do with these. Now, if you're doing 140, I like to mount those first when I'm painting outside. I like to mount them first on a panel, but you can also mount them afterwards. And if you're going to work on 140, I would spray the back and put it onto like plexiglass or something so it sticks down and it stays flat. But I paint right off the edge. I paint right off the edge. I don't have the tape. I know people like the little white line around that, but that makes it so it's not standard sizes, and that makes it really hard and very expensive for us artists to then go and frame it. So that's why I'm going to be going all the way to the edge. And I use 300 pounds, so I don't even tape it down or do anything. And I do work on a towel because you can see I always have these white towels I get from Goodwill. And I just wash them, I bleach them, and I'll use both sides, and then I just dump them into a big bucket with bleach, and I clean them up and try them again. So I'm never using really paper towel. Sometimes I use paper towel, but most of the time I don't. I just rub it right here because it's right next to my paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet this whole paper, wet the whole paper, and not worry about the buildings, not worry about anything. I'm just wetting it. And if I were using 140 pound, I would also wet the back and stick it down onto a panel. But since this is 300 pound, I don't have to do the back. And it's going to curve a little bit because paper expands when you wet it like this. And when you tape it, then it's expanding, but you're holding it tight, right? And so that's how come you're going to get all those waves in it when you're using 140 pound. All right, so I'm just wetting it with just clean water, clear water. Going back and forth. I let it kind of sit there a little bit to soak into the paper because if you don't, then you're going to have an uneven amount of, some places have more water, some places have less water. So I like to go over it like this and wait a second or two and let it just sink in a little bit. And then it'll kind of soften itself and it'll make everything all even because it's kind of blending. The water's blending together. And now we'll take a color for the background and the sky. The sky basically in this picture is a white, right? I could change that if I want to. Maybe I'll put a little bit, I'll take a little bit of Verditer blue. It's a purple blue. And compose, yeah, that's Verditer blue. It's like kind of a purpley blue. I'm just gonna not worry about the buildings because the buildings are gonna be darker, right? So us watercolors, we paint through. When we do our lights, we just paint through the building. And later, when it's dry, I can make a hard edge when I go back. And so I'm just letting it float in there. And maybe you have a certain style where you spatter things, or you want to make a certain look of watercolor. So I'm just kind of going in there. I'm going to put a little spatter in there just to make it look like a neat watercolor wash. And this is called wet into wet because I wet the paper and now I'm going back into it with pigment. And it's floating. And there are certain colors you can buy, like granulating colors, that will even do some really neat things. There's luminous colors, granulating colors. There's all kinds of different pigment that you can use. There's even metal, like metal pigment, where it's what do they call those? Oh, well, it's like silver and gold, and they have a little bit of the look
Metallic,
of
metallic.
iridescent, that iridescent pigment you can use. Now I'm gonna go right into the street because the street is reflecting, it's wet, right? Because it's like a rainy scene. So I'm gonna go right down into here. Oh, I picked up some black in here. So go back with the blue. And this is basically just the one color that I'm using, the Verditor blue right now. And this is just my lights, and I'm establishing a little bit of my color scheme. If I'm using blue, I usually tend to use a worm, like orange, because blue and orange are complements. So I use a little bit of orange or earth tone with my blue. And I don't care what color you use. You can use bright pink in this if you wanted to. And as long as you keep the value right, the value is more important than the color because the value shows the lights and darks and the composition of the light and dark. The color can do that too, but you can throw away that composition if you make it different colors and make it kind of interesting. Like I like doing that sometimes where I totally change the color of the scene and just make sure I follow the values. So right now that's the values, right, of the scene. And also get yourself your watercolors. These are these misters. Keep your paper wet without destroying it with the sprayer. The sprayers are too harsh. This is a mister, and so it takes a little mist. And what you can do is to keep it wet is I just go over it really lightly one time, and that's enough to keep it moist and not going to make it big puddles. It's just going to keep it moist so that I get more time and I can talk a little bit more. And and you look and you want to not lose the shine. You don't want to lose the shine because I want to get soft edges. I still want to keep soft edges. And in a wash like this, if you want a harder edge, not a hard edge, a harder edge, then it's still soft, but it's like creating a shape like these buildings back here. So that's what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my round brush or maybe a smaller flat brush. I'm taking a 1/2 inch flat brush and I'm just going to start with the buildings back here and they go from a light to a dark, right? And this is all wet, but what if I want an edge on there? I'm just going to have to use my pigment thick because it won't bleed as far. I still want a soft edge, or I could wait until it totally dries and then make a hard edge too. But I want you to learn how to do wet into wet. And so I'm going to take the color, not very much, just wet my brush, but get the other water out of it and pick up the pigment that you want. Not so much water though. I'm just going to take up pure pigment and put it on my palette right here. See, I don't have much water in there. And then I rub it on my towel here. I just tap it on my towel. I'm trying to go into the paint with not much water because the water's already on the paper, right? I can go right through these people, right into my wash in the street, and I'm doing this back building here, and I need enough pigment and the right value, and I'm just putting it right down there. See, I'm getting an edge. It's because I'm using a lot of pigment. If you don't use much pigment and more water, it's just going to bleed over like I did the first wash, right? So you have to use an amount of pigment with no water, just almost pure pigment to go in there. Now, if your pure pigment is too dark, then you have to put a little bit of white in there to give it a little bit. See how it's just bleeding? But what I'm doing is I'm taking a lavender. I'm using a lavender with a little bit of that blue, and I just dipped into water, which is not good because I have to pick up pure pigment because I need a hard edge. And this is not even hard enough. And I'm only doing this. I would normally just wait for this to dry, but we don't have time for that to wait to dry. I do have a hair dryer, but I'm just going to show you how to get soft edges and control in a wet wash. This is controlling your watercolor in a wet wash. Now I can change colors a little bit on each building. It's a little bit different back there, but this is a lot of aerial perspective on a day when it's raining like this. So again, don't be afraid of asking me questions, guys. I know you're probably working real hard trying to get as fast as I'm going, but don't try to go as fast. It's going to be hard to do that. And I'm going down here right into the street right now, right through the people, because they're gonna be darker. Anything that's back there is lighter than the stuff in front, so you just go right through the things in front. And down here, I don't have to get the shape of it as much because it's kind of blurry. And so I'm just gonna go back and forth. Now I'm noticing my edges are getting dry, so I really quickly go back with my mister. Again, it's a mister, it's not a sprayer. It's not one of those sprayers that sprays a lot of water. It's like a mist of color, a mist of water that just goes over it and keeps it damp. Just keeps it damp. Now, if that's not gray enough, I have a color called gray on gray. I can put a little gray in there, or I can put a little black in there, or I can use a complement of blue. And that'd be like an earth tone, like a little bit of reddish orange. And that'll give me kind of a gray, and it'll make it a little bit grayer than the blue. There's many different ways, and it's not mud. People tend to call that grays are mud because they went into a color that was just opposite, and which is going to make it either brown or gray. And this I used a little bit of the orange or a little bit of burnt sienna, and it kind of made it a little bit gray because burnt sienna is like an orange, and with the blue you'll get a gray or a brown, depending on how much you use of each color. And I'm gonna go a little bit more here. Again, watch your brush and know how much water you have in there. And then down here, I'm also going to do some lines that are this way and that way, back and forth, because there's puddles on the street. And so I'm just going to go in there right now and just put them in right like that. Now it's getting more gray and more warmer as I come forward. And not in the picture. In the picture, it's still blue in front, but I want to make that a little bit warmer. And there's some darks in there, but I'm going to get to that. And so I'm just getting darker as I come along, as I go along. Take a little bit of this blue and violet. And now just, again, get my edge. It's going to be a soft edge because I'm using it. It's still wet. Now, the cars are going to be colored. So I'm going to stop at the cars. I'm going to go right through there because they're going to be a color. And I don't want to have the gray on the red car. So I'm just putting this down. Underneath the car, though, I can keep it going down here. Just keep it going. Bring it down. It's still all wet. That's how come you're seeing no hard edges. You're seeing no hard edges because I'm not letting it get dry. And that's people always say, well, it's like you're going so fast. But I put the one wash down and I'm done with it. I don't have to go back into this later on. It's done because I kept it dry, I kept it wet. I got all my values in there. I know it's going to be dry, but about 20% lighter. So I go about 20% darker than it is. And I know where my lights and darks are going to be, right? Because I told you right in the beginning, this is dark, and this right down the middle is light. I know exactly, and it doesn't matter what color I get there. You can get any color you want there as long as you're copying the values. Values are so much more important than the color at this stage. Well, actually at any stage. And then the nice thing is I call this floating your pigment. You got water, you're putting pigment into the water. It's a puddle. You're like a kid in a puddle, and you're just putting dirt in there, and you're putting colored dirt into the puddle. And I've controlled the edge with the amount of paint I have in my brush. I mean, that's not that hard. We're kids and playing in mud. And then I can make things a little bit darker. And I'm a teacher that doesn't mind you using black. I know that my teachers always taught me to mix my blacks, mix your blacks. But then by the time you're mixing it, it's already too late because then it's dried and you get really frustrated and you're just not getting the right value. Well, just buy the darn black and then put color into the black when you want it colorful. It's not that difficult. And here I'm getting all soft edges because that's what I want. I want all soft edges. And now I know I'm going over the light parts, but I'm going to show you later how to get that. Like the headlights have streaks into the thing. I can do that now while it's wet. I can do that really quick, like here. I can just pull it out. I can pull out the pigment. You can pull it out like this. Or I can come back later when it's dry and and do it while it's dry, the same thing, or use white paint. And I'm going to do all three of these to show you just what I mean. Now back to my bigger brush, because now I got a big area of dark to get here. And I got to go from a lighter dark. And I want to now go into something more warm. So I'm going to add a little orange to this blue now, and get a little bit more warm. Get a warmer gray. I mean, this is a city scene, and those buildings are not painted a bright color. They're pretty much a drab color, but I'm going to put a little orange in my blue. I use brilliant orange. I use Prussian blue, ultramarine blue. Ooh, that's marine blue right there. let's get a little bit darker because over here it's almost black. It is almost black on this side, which I will get after I do a big wash first of medium, because I still want this to be medium over here. Now watch how you don't get wetter than what's there because if you get too dark right here, that'll bleed in, and that's almost drying, and so you get a watermark. Anytime you lose the shine, you're gonna get a watermark, and that's why you missed it again down here. Gotta missed it. Now I gave myself more time again. It's like you're always running the clock, and so you always have to watch it and make sure you don't lose the shine. The shine means once you lose the shine, that means it's no go. You got to stop because then you have to let it totally dry, then re-wet to get the same look again. Because if it's all different value or different dry and wetness, you have to have all the same wetness. So that makes it easier on you to actually paint. And here I didn't make it thick enough with the paint because it's bleeding all over the place. So I'm just going to put more pigment in there so it doesn't bleed all over. Water is just going to run. You can't stop the water unless you put a blockage there by adding pigment. Add pigment to it and you'll block it right away. I'm going to take a little bit of purple in my blue and just make this really dark over here. And I know you're saying, well, what about the windows? What about all that stuff that you're not seeing, you're not putting in right now? That's detail, and that you do in step three. Becker, a three-step, and that's the third step. First, we got to get the lights, then we got to get the big mediums and darks, and then we'll go into the detail. Wow, is anybody there? Did I? Somebody ask one question. Come on, ask me a question.
What's your biggest challenge with the painting?
My biggest challenge is again, it's pretty much getting the pigment dark enough. That's one thing about watercolors. We never get our paintings dark enough because it's always lighting up about 20%. So that's the biggest, hardest challenge for me for teaching, for myself, just for painting. It's always the biggest problem I have is getting dark enough.
Uh, mm, mm, mm.
And here I'm just getting mediums and darks, but do you see any details yet? No, not at all, right? I'm not doing any details. I'm just getting the big picture. And it's all still wet. This side's starting to dry a little bit. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of water on this side. And that doesn't mean I can't go back in here and darken again, but I tried as watercolors, I try to get everything in a one wash deal because once you have to go back in and put another coat, the most you want to put is three coats. After that, you're going to get a lot of dark, and it's going to blend together. Colors are going to blend together. It's not going to look as fresh, but doesn't mean you can't. You can do 100 washes, but you have to just let them dry. And the next one you put on is always going to be darker, unless you pull out some of the paint afterwards too. And look at here, it got so wet that it's kind of blurry, but it's a rain scene, so that's okay. Now this side, I may even, because it's drying a little bit, what I'm going to do here is make this really dark, because right this side is really darker than this side. So I'm just going to go in there with a little bit of the purple. I use permanent violet, a little bit of black, a little bit of that blue I used in the beginning. And it's not a tint of color, it's a wash of color. And what's the difference between that? A wash of color is I have a lot of pigment and a lot of water, but see how there's a lot of pigment floating in there? And a tint would be a lot of water, like this is a lot of water with hardly any pigment in it. And that's a tint, that's a wash. And tints are great for when you're covering over and it's transparent and you just want to make it a slightly different color. A wash, you want to put a lot of pigment in there and just let it float. Also let it float though. You still want to let it float. And here, the more pigment you put in, the more you can control it because that helps you control the pigment because it's not running out, it's not running with the water. See, I can actually put so much in there. And these two umbrellas are light, but I'm just going to pull it out later. See, I'm going right over everything. I'm going right over the people, and it's transparent, so you will see it's going to dry up about 20% lighter. So you'll see that, and then these windows right here are kind of dark blue because squint your eye. The area is dark. It's not like there's nothing in this area that's as light as the darkest light in the light area. It's got to be darker than this light, right down to the reflections in the street. Now there's these crosswalk markers, it's like these things. I'm not going to go around them. I'm going to take them out later. People always tend to paint the paintings too um, pieces. They paint pieces. They see a person. They paint around them. They see a building that's by itself, and but it's not. There's three or four or five buildings right here, and but I'm putting them all together as long as I'm also getting the reflection into the street along with this little part of the walkway here. And I am even going to put in with my smaller brush, I'm going to wet the area again. And I'm going to put in my reflections of these people into the street because I want them soft edge because right now it's still wet in the wet. I still wet everything, so I'm still getting a nice soft edge. Once it's dry, then I'm no longer can do that unless I let it totally dry and then go ahead and re-wet again, which I will do. I'll show you that really quickly later. But right now I'm just getting the dark. That's a dark, that's the light. And look, you can already see kind of like what it is, right? I mean, you can already see it's the buildings and there's no details, there's no windows, but you can already tell it's going to be a decent composition. All right. All right, I think I got that. This part will have to be darker again later, but okay, let's see what we can do now. Now, since I have to wait for these things to dry, I'm going to go and see. This has started to dry back here, so now I can go in with my hard edges. There's a train again going back to Chicago. All right, let's see. So this is starting to dry back here, and there is some little bit of difference of these buildings. So I'm going in now with a tint. And again, remember what I said a tint was? A lot of not much pigment and more water than pigment. And so I don't have to use a lot of water either, but just hardly any pigment I'm using right now. And I want to get in there and just get these buildings kind of separated. It's a small tint, not much water, not much pigment. It's just a tint of color. And if I want to make windows, now's the perfect time too. I can go in there and just hit it a couple times. I mean, it's so far away that you can gesture at the windows. Like I can put little lines in there, little dots in there. I know it's probably hard to keep up, and that's probably why you're not asking questions because you're busy, very busy, right? And so I'm going in here now and get a little bit of dark for the people and the cars. There's some cars back here. It's a little bit darker. I put the little reflections into the street too. And there's also usually on ground level, there's a bunch of different things the buildings change a little bit. There's a lot of stuff happening on the bottom of the buildings, which is not happening on top of the building. So I'm going to put that in there now too. And see how my background already looks like it's almost a photographic now because there's just a little bit more subject matter in there and there's a little bit more detail. But you don't want to overdo it. The more you do here, then you have to do double it up here because this up here then has to be really, really detailed. So I'll put a couple of windows, just dabbing my windows in there. And then this building, I'm going to create the side being a little bit darker, even though it's actually a little bit lighter. I'm going to make it a little bit darker, the side here. Again, it's very much a tint that I'm going over. Okay. And then down here again is a bunch of different things that are happening. And then maybe we have that says almost dry. See, I'm always watching how dry things are because in a painting like this, I don't have time to sit there and wait for it to dry or even blow dry because that even takes time. So I'm gonna make this car, since this car is totally dry, I'm just gonna make it a red car. And I'm doing the light part of the car first, and so I can go through the whole car. It doesn't matter. Um, it's going to be darker parts, but I'm getting the lightest color first, and that's red. I just taking a red Scarlet Lake. I'm just going to put it right on there, right on the car, except for the lights. The headlights I'm going to keep. I'm going to try to keep light by going around them. Later on, I can put white there also. That's a red car over here. We may have a blue car. And so I'll get a little bit lighter blue and I'll just go across it's like a cube. Think of a car as a cube. And it's a box, right? It's a box, a rectangular box. And it has underside which is dark. And I didn't go around the lights on this one. But I can pull that back out, and then there'll be some darks underneath, right? Because it's really dark underneath. Back here, I'm gonna get a couple colors. While I have that color in there, I know so there's people sitting on the street or standing in the street, so I'm gonna make them dark too. The windshield will be dark, but I actually shouldn't do that yet. Okay, that's the little things. But that it was dry, so that's the reason I'm going there. I'm kind of waiting for this area because it's still a little wet and I want to get hard edges. So while that's wet, I'm gonna start going to step 3 again and use my small round brush. What I'm gonna do is that center guy that's right in the center. It could be a man or a woman, and I'm just gonna give it a nice black umbrella. Again, I'm just doing this you could do later, like if you're on your own. But since it's a video and we got to get done in an hour, I'm just finding places that are dry. But I am in step 3 anyways. I mean, I am in step 3 where we're doing detail now. I can put a color on him. I can put a little bit of color. He doesn't have to be all just a black suit all the time. Maybe he's carrying a bag. He's carrying a bag from somewhere. He just went shopping. And then he's going to be meeting this person right here. And this now is a lighter umbrella. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the color. I'm not going to put in anything, and I'm not going to put in white. I'm just pulling out this color of the umbrella. I'm re-wetting the surface. And depending on what kind of paper you have, some papers are a little bit harder to do this, but I'm just wiping out that umbrella and making it back to the white of the paper. So I'm just pulling out the paint and just letting it. And this also gives me a lot of times a soft edge too, depending on how wet the paper is. And I'm gonna do another one down here. And then later on I can give it a color too. At the same time I can do a couple of people back here. It looks like there's a bunch of people back here. Let me pull my image over here a little bit so I can see what I'm painting. So I know there's a sign there's a really bright sign right here, but I'm not throwing that in there because it's just too much. Here is just a bunch of silhouette shapes of people. And this is where you can do those carrot stick people. Type in one time in the YouTube, carrot stick people or groups of people with watercolor, and you'll see them. They're all these little bodies with legs, carrot stick legs. They call them carrot stick people. I call them David Dabbs people. And then you can put different colors in for what they're wearing. And now everything's getting a little bit dry, so that's good. It's a good thing. But see how this area lightened, how much it lightened? And here I almost put black in there. It looked like black, right, when I was doing it? And this is all still transparent watercolor. We haven't done any gouache yet. Gouache is opaque watercolor, and I haven't really used opaque watercolor yet. And opaque watercolor is just using it thicker or putting some white in it to make it a little bit opaque, so you can't see through it. And you can cover up. You can put light on dark and dark on light, and you're covering up areas. And for some shows like the TWSA, you can't use white, but for AWS you can use that. And so it's up to you if you want to be able to do transparent watercolor or opaque watercolor or mix of both together, which is what I'm starting to do a lot of. I want to do opaques because I like that look too. So I'm figuring, hey, I'm not a oil painter, but I like the look of oil painting. And so I think I can put it into my style that I'm trying to invent right now. All right, so it looks like we got some things getting nice and dry now. Okay, so that's dry. Now we're going to put in our thicker darks. Now we're going to really go in and put in our detail, the windows, but not as you think. It's like I'm still going to simplify it. Like this is a dark. Let's see, is that the dark part? Let's boom, boom. Okay, this is part is dark. I'm just going to take this. You could also use a ruler to make it nice and straight, but no time for that. And then this will be some windows in there. And some people are a little bit more detailed. Some people are super detailed. It's all up to your style, what you like. And some, like I don't have the patience to do hyperrealism. I just don't have that in me to sit there and work like 40 hours on a painting. It's just something I can't do. I like to be more of an impressionist where I'm interpreting what the picture is more than the actual photograph of it. And it's all good. It's all what everybody does. Some people do it differently. That's all cool. One's not better than the other. It's just a different style. And now we're going to go, this part is dark. And I'm using just my darks in my palette. I'm not picking up an exact color. I already used these colors already. They're in the middle of my palette, so I know I used them already. So I'm just using the dark part of that. And now this is a real nice dark that goes across. And see how now I'm negative painting. I'm leaving the white as the parts that are lighter, right? And then the other parts are darker. So you paint around the lights. So where oil painters would put that on later, right? Because we don't oil painters do not do negative painting. They put the lights on top of the darks. And so we're a little bit different in that we paint around the lights. And then later on we come back and we could also put in the white, but again, it's up to you. All right, and here it gets really dark right here.
Do you call that creamy paint at this point, a little heavier?
Yeah, it's a little bit like whipping cream almost, but it depends on how much water you put down. So right now I'm not putting any water down, and I'm getting a hard edge because this is dry now, but it's almost like whipping cream. Maybe a little bit less like a watery whipping cream. Again, you can see I'm not being really detailed and tight. But I am trying to get the light pattern and I'm trying to get the look of what the object that I am painting. It's just that I'm not, super tight with it. If you want to be super tight with it, then you have to draw it also. You have to make sure you get all the drawing in there so it looks exactly like what you had drawn or what the reference is. Or if you're plein air painting, you got to be, right on. So your drawing has to be really perfect. So now I'm putting my darks in. See how the darks, and I'm going to leave a little bit of this area of light because there's looks like some windows that have yellow in it. And I'll do this first. I probably should put the yellow in there first, but and go over it. But again, I can do that later too. It's no big deal.
I'm just saying, they have 4 years, the Republicans, they better start now to recruit a really great
And then we get some red over here.
up and down the line.
Like I said, as you go down, it gets a little bit more things happening on the street level. So that is something you want to keep in consideration when you're doing that. That let the color be a little bit brighter and all the objects happening down here. Save it for down here. Now there's a couple awnings right here that are red. I'm just going to make them red awnings. Then maybe there's some people with my small brush. I go in there now and get some people with umbrellas. or paint around some umbrellas and then just put little carrot stick people in there again. This area looks really dark right now, but it's going to lighten up too much. So I'm taking a brush with a lot of pigment. This is a lot of pigment so that I can just let it sit there. It's gonna be a soft edge, but it'll be really nice and dark. And it won't, the more pigment you use, the less it's going to turn lighter. And this is the second wash, right? This is the second wash. So I will have one more wash that I could do to make it look even better. But that's what I always try to keep everything in 3 washes. And once you start going over 3 washes, you start getting a little bit muddy and just a little bit overworked. It just gets that look of overworkedness to it. Overworkedness? There's a new word. So we're just going to go down here. See how I'm not really looking to make it perfect, I'm just make it look like a neat watercolor, nice washes. A little bit of the car has to look like a car, right? But it's just a box. And if you do get things wrong, there's always ways of changing it. Watercolor has gotten a bad rap for that. They always say that you can't change watercolor afterwards, or you can't do washes, you can't rub things out. Yes, you can. You can do all that stuff. It just gets a bad rap for that because it does take time to do changing. Like if you have to change something and rub something out and go back in, which you don't want to do, but sometimes you can do it. It is possible. All right, now I got that side pretty much except for the street. I want to do the street, but let's do those lines. I'm gonna do some of the lines that are the crosswalk. I'm gonna do some of them by negative painting, and some I'll just put in with white paint later on. And you're gonna see that I am gonna use white paint. And if you're watercolors, that most transparent watercolors don't like that. That's not a thing. But I like it because it just gives me another advantage to making it look real and also make it look like an oil a little bit. All right, let's hurry up and do this side real quickly. So this side is again, I'm gonna go across it really quickly with my brush. Now this is all dry, and if I take this building and go really quickly and just like go that, I can get a mark of the brush to give me some. Well, now I had it too wet, so I can't get too much lines in there. But I can go back in. Watch this. I can just go down like this and just get a look of lines like windows. And then there's this part of it right there. It kind of goes this direction. And it has some lights in there, but it's like an overhang, right? It's an overhang. And then down here, there's actually windows. And now this first wash will give me the lights of those windows. And then just go down into the street. And same thing with the people. They get reflections into the street. Now this is hard edge, right? Because it's not wet, but you can take your brush real quickly with a little bit of water and just pull it down. You can just pull it down, wet it, and it's going to be out of focus then. It's going to be soft edge again, right? So water softens your edges. Dry paper hardens them. Now we'll get this pull in here. So now I'm definitely at a detail stage, right? And this I should have used a ruler. Just follow a ruler. Just take a ruler and brush it across the ruler because look at how terrible that looks what I just did. I'll take my rigger brush, which is a long, thin brush to get the light on top there. I'm just hurrying a little bit because I'm looking at my clock and we don't have much time. So I'm going to hurry up a little bit. Sorry, I'm going so fast. And this now is like, this all is about how well you are at drawing things or how well you drew it up in the beginning. And I also use it sometimes tell my students to use tracing paper. I don't have any problem with that. A lot of people use projectors. A lot of people use all kinds of things to get their painting or they're drawing on the painting. So, and with watercolor, you usually draw everything on first before you start painting. And I have no problem with you sitting there tracing it when you're learning. Little by little, you can get start learning about drawing and stuff. And but to learn watercolor, you gotta have a good drawing. Get a good drawing first, and that makes a lot of things a lot easier down the road. All right, now let's get this foreground going here. Now the foreground is going to be wet, right? And so I have to look at where these lights are going to be. So I'm going to put a little white in here. Just on the what I use for white is a bleed proof white. You can also use tube gouache, tube white, watercolor. I like this stuff because it stays nice and moist and it's very opaque. And so like I'm gonna put this on the two cars right here for their lights. That way I know into the water on the street where these lights are going to be shining. So I'm just putting them in there for that reason. And there's a couple back here. There's a couple of cars that have the lights on. And then I'm going to put a little bit of light in here. So I'm just putting a little lights here and there, and I will put color into some of them later on. But I kind of need to do that now because we're running out of time. And so I just want to, it's the detail stage. And that means they're going to be in the street too here. Whichever in the street is also reflecting too. Now I know where this is going to be. And why don't I put a little bit of light in the street right away? This will blend when I put water on it. It'll blend really nicely. Because it's also a pigment and it floats once you put water on it. So I can just do that first. And then when I wet it, I'm going to re-wet this whole bottom part because I wanted everything to be soft first. And so you just go right over it and that'll blend it. Because the street is a lot darker than you see it. And the first wash I put in there, we kind of lost all the darks. So now we put in the darks that I see up there, and I have a little red right there. So I'm going to put that red right there. Match what's on above it. Match the colors that are up here, down here. And then take the blue. Okay, we gotta have more than one question, you guys. Somebody's gotta ask a question. Let me ask something. I gotta have at least
So
three
how,
questions.
how did you get into watercolor and how long have you been doing it?
I write from American Academy of Art. I took a teacher named Irving Shapiro, and he was in Chicago when probably one of the most instructors. I mean, everybody took Irving Shapiro. If you're a student in Chicago and you did watercolor, you took Irving Shapiro, and so he got me into it. And from that point on, I just took his class and I learned it, and it was so much easier and faster to do than oils. And so when I got my first job as an illustrator, I would do it on the train. I could do it on a train going into the city. Actually, that train you hear out there that you heard before, that's the train I took. And but that's why I started there and I never stopped. I did do oils for a little bit, but it was always harder to do that because of the material you use. And I just got into watercolors, and now I'm trying to get back into the oils a little bit with the gouache. So I'm actually starting to do my watercolors to have a little bit of a look of gouache, and that has a look of oil, meaning that you're putting in thick pigment and using the brushwork to maybe make things look like a brushstroke, basically.
We have another question in the chat. It says, "Is your brush wet when blending and softening the bottom part?"
Um, uh, where I want it to be, it's all wet and wet again. So my brush, it can't be wetter than the surface because if I do it like right here, I just been it wetter, it's going to give you a watermark. So you always make sure your brush is a little bit drier than the surface that you wet. Like unless I'm putting white, like the white here, I'm putting it pretty thick, and then I'm just going to blend it like this. And that's not so much floating your pigment. That's pretty much like a brushstroke with the gouache I was just talking about. Because when I put in thick, like an oil, then I'm doing a brushstroke. If I'm blending by itself, where it's blending by itself, then I let the water do that. And so my brush is always depends on what's happening there, but it's always a little bit drier than the surface. It's just a little bit drier than the surface because that way you're just pushing paint around like I'm doing right now. I'm just pushing the paint around in a wet surface, except right there it's dry. You can see a hard edge. So I got a hard edge right there. That means the paper is dry right there. Now I can re-wet it and make it dry or make it wet again. And then I'm going to take this side because it's like I'm going to take these crosswalk and make them white with just my wet brush because I'm getting back down to the white of paper. And then there is also a bunch of reflections here in the street, and there's also lines. And watch this, I'm just going to take them out with my brush being damp. See, I just pulled it out because this is all wet still, so I can pull that out. I can actually I could have done the crosswalk like that too. I could have taken the crosswalk and taken it out afterwards too. And then there's a bunch of lines like puddles and stuff. So I'm just going to take my brush, dry it on my towel, and just pull out some paint in this wet wash. And it could be, I can even make like tire tracks, where the cars went through here. I can just go like that and make it look like the cars went through there. And maybe one turned right here. Maybe they turned. And so there's a turn, right? Because the street is wet. So I can go there and just turn the car. And then this part has to be darker because look at how light this is over here. This buildings are really dark, so that reflects into the street. So I'm taking pure pigment with hardly any water in my brush, hardly any water in my brush. Knowing the pigment ratio between your brush and the paper, that's what you really want to watch out for. What is your paper? How much pigment do you need to make it control it? Or do you want to have control? Do you want it just to run all over the place? That's okay too. Sometimes you want it to run really far.
Is your paper flat or do you have your board tilted at an angle?
I have it flat because I normally when I'm doing the videos I have it flat.
Okay.
And when I'm painting for myself, like in the studio, I do have a little bit of an angle on it. But for the purpose of the camera and everything, I just use it flat. I just notice it's make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, because sometimes, and I also have it on, like when I'm on a board, I work a lot on board now because because I wax everything, I work it on a board and then I don't have to glue it down or I don't have to tape it down and I can actually move things around and then I can do things with it. I can do upside down, I can do whatever, I can just move it. On this one, usually again, because it's a video, I keep it perfectly straight and just work it the way it is. You do whatever you have to, the brushes you have to use. I mean, everybody can use a different brush depending on what they like. You have to just really practice a lot. I'm going to put a little bit windows here, maybe with a little mullen, I heard, and the grills. So basically, I'm going in there now and just getting the heck out with a lot of details. Small brush, white paint, opaque paints. Now I'm just going to go in with crazy with the white paint. So I'm going to take this time. I'm going to use the white paint. I have this paint here, and I'll just add a little bit. Well, I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm just going to go in here and get some of the reflections in the street. Now this is almost like your oil painting now because it's not running. It's just thick watercolor. And this is called opaque watercolor now. This is gouache. And you don't have to buy gouache to use gouache. Gouache is just opaque watercolor, and sometimes you can use it thicker. Like you see in my palette, I have a couple of blues here that are very pastel-like, so they have white in them, and so you can use that as a thick paint. See, I'm just putting stuff on top now. So I'm at the point now where I'm using it like an oil. I'm using opaque watercolor, and this is where I'm putting light on top of dark. See how I'm taking these colors and just putting them in there. And I like that look. I mean, a lot of people don't like that look. They like everything transparent. I personally like this look. And then I can paint longer too. And I don't have to ruin as many things because I can actually do things when I'm at the end and I don't have to wipe them out. And I don't have to use masking fluid to get my whites back. I just put them in with white paint. But there are some shows that you're not allowed to use that, so you cannot use them. But if you're not doing those shows, AWS allows this. Um, TWSA does not. Transparent Water Society does not allow that. And look at, I'll put a little stoplight in here. I'll just make it bright red. Now my red is not opaque. It's transparent. But sometimes I bring with my gouache paints and they're ground finer. But what I can do on my watercolors, I can just add white paint to them to make them a little bit brighter. But then they get pastel-like. But even when I do oils nowadays, because I do water-based oils sometimes, and I still use them like watercolor. I still get big washes of things happening where I first put them down in big washes, and then I come back in later and I use it thick, like I'm doing this now. And it is 7 o'clock, so I should be done, right?
You
Can I ask where we can see the recording of this? When we can record it, see it later?
Yeah, so we're gonna put it on our YouTube channel on our website.
Okay.
If you got the emailed link, it has our website on there. Otherwise, David will also probably put it on his, or you can just
Okay.
email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and then when it's available, I can send it to you.
Okay, if he's going to put it on his, I'll be able to get it from there then.
Yep.
Great.
I'll be putting
Thank
it on
David,
you.
you
my
have a question on the chat that says, "What do you consider your stopping point?"
my stopping point is when the time's up and when I'm in my studio, I just look for things until I feel it's finished. And it's like some people find it looser to be finished, and some people like real tight to be finished. So it's basically the person's likings, basically. Like I still have a few things to do here, like these windows, and it'd be kind of nice to have the windows in there, but they're not very tight. They're just I'm putting in really loose windows, but that way it just has a look to it. And as long as my center of interest then is giving me what I wanted to give, the look. And I mean, it's a very loose painting, right? It doesn't look super tight. And I mean, for a 1 hour painting, you got to think of that too. It's like, how long do you want to do the painting? And then I'll come back sometimes the second day and I'll look at it, and there may be things I've missed or something. So I usually give myself another day to then look at it and then make changes or add things or things I didn't do. And I usually, when I do my studio paintings, I do about three paintings at a time. Because I don't just like doing one painting because then I got to wait a lot. And so sometimes I put it away and look at it again later. Let me do one more thing for the opaque part of this. And that is, I'm going to put a light of yellow. I'm taking yellow and white and do it in the windows here because there's some yellow in the windows here. And this is opaque. That's opaque. I didn't, I could wipe it out. I mean, I could wipe out to the paper and then add it transparently, but I don't mind just doing this with the opaque colors and then put them right into the street. You can even blend it yourself. When you put in gouache, you usually have to blend it yourself with the brush, where when I did the watercolor, I let it blend itself. I basically let the pigment do the blending. And this again still has to be a little bit darker because that's dark up there, and then we're done. But I would love to see what everybody got. If we have a little bit more time, can everybody just put their paintings up to the screen?
Yeah, I think we can stop recording now, and then I can go to viewing everybody, and then you guys can just hold your stuff up. How about that? Sam, do you want to